Imagine trying to rebuild an entire nation, literally from the ground up. I mean, how much would something like that even cost? Well, according to the sources we're analyzing in today's explainer, the answer is a staggering $200 billion to $250 billion. That is an astronomical number. But right now, a highly strategic closed-door deal has been set in motion between Egypt and Sudan to do exactly that. This isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill bilateral agreement. It is a massive, historically significant blueprint designed to completely reconstruct a nation that has been ravaged by internal conflict. So let's dive right in and explore exactly how this $250 billion reconstruction plan is structured, where the money is actually coming from, and the incredible physical and security integration it proposes. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover border security control, the gold industry partnership, rebuilding the nation, regional infrastructure, and finally, Sudanese military support. Starting with Section 1, Border Security Control, also known as Operation Southern Shield. To really put the sheer scale of this operation into perspective, we are talking about a 1,280-kilometer border. That is roughly the distance from New York to Chicago. Just imagine that entire stretch of land being completely vulnerable and porous. According to our sources, the Egyptian military had to rapidly step in, deploying highly advanced surveillance and mechanized units to regain control of this immense shared border. They systematically neutralized unauthorized crossings, physically sealing up a massive frontier. The source refers to this rapid stabilization operation as the Second Crossing. It's a nod to historic, highly coordinated military feats, and you can see why. The main targets here were the so-called gold gangs. These were heavily armed smuggling mafias and militias who had essentially carved out their own mini-state, relentlessly exploiting the region's natural resources. Expelling these groups and neutralizing their operations in just 6 days was absolutely crucial. It basically stopped the bleeding of national wealth and laid the foundational groundwork for this entire recovery plan. Okay, so the border is locked down, but that brings us to the elephant in the room. $250 billion is an almost unimaginable amount of capital. How exactly does a recovering, fractured nation foot a bill like that? That brings us to Section 2, the Gold Industry Partnership, which is all about funding the future. The answer to that multi-billion-dollar question literally lies right in the ground: Sudan's vast, mostly untapped gold reserves. In the past, the source estimates that over 10,000 tons of gold were smuggled out of Sudan, stolen by those exact same gold gangs we just talked about. This new blueprint completely shifts away from that chaos. By capturing that lost wealth and transitioning to official, state-led partnerships, refined gold is going to act as the primary financial engine to bankroll the nation's physical reconstruction. Let's trace this fascinating supply chain, because this is where the logistics get really interesting. Sudan's domestic mining and refining infrastructure has been heavily damaged, right? So a temporary, highly lucrative partnership has been formed. Step 1, raw gold is officially and securely extracted in Sudan. Step 2, it's sent to advanced Egyptian hubs for refining. The source highlights some very specific state-of-the-art facilities taking this on, like the Suez and Ain Sokna economic zones, Marsa Alam, and the highly anticipated Gold City in Egypt's new administrative capital. The massive revenues generated from this refined gold are then channeled directly into funding Sudan's reconstruction costs. But here is the really cool long-term goal. Eventually, they will use this wealth, along with Egyptian engineering expertise, to rebuild Sudan's native refineries, bringing full, localized production right back home. Moving on to Section 3, Rebuilding the Nation and the Egypt-Sudan Reconstruction Deal. This is where the sheer physical scale of the blueprint becomes visible. We're talking about an astonishing 174,000 Egyptian companies across contracting, real estate, and engineering being activated. They are slated to tackle the construction of 1 million to 4 million new housing units for displaced citizens. On top of that, these Egyptian companies are tasked with building a brand new administrative capital for Sudan, directly modeled after Egypt's own recent massive urban developments. And to rapidly accelerate trade, key Sudanese Red Sea ports and airports are going to be rehabilitated under use-of-rect agreements. If you aren't familiar, think of a use-of-rect agreement like a very long-term, mutually beneficial lease. Egyptian firms build, modernize, and manage the ports, reaping the operational benefits, while Sudan retains ultimate ownership of the land. Plus, there's a regional electrical interconnection project in the works to quickly supply vital energy to Sudan until its domestic grid is fully back online. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Regional Infrastructure, Integration, and Growth. You see, this agreement goes way beyond just building houses. It outlines a deep physical economic integration designed to permanently link these two neighbors. It's essentially a story of train tracks, leading to unprecedented food security. First, the strategic goal is to physically integrate the two national railway networks. Then, leveraging Sudan's massive, incredibly fertile lands, Egyptian agricultural companies will secure those same usufruct lease agreements we just discussed to launch large-scale farming projects. The payoff? This newly integrated railway will facilitate the seamless, high-volume export of all these agricultural goods directly into the Egyptian market. It's a brilliant way to transform Sudan into a modernized agricultural powerhouse while meeting regional demand. But of course, agriculture requires a lot of reliable water. Historically, relying on external dam projects left Sudan highly vulnerable to severe seasonal flooding and debilitating droughts. It was a constant cycle of extremes. To solve this, Egyptian engineering expertise is stepping in to completely modernize Sudan's water management. Instead of relying on structures outside their borders, a vast, localized network of dams and reservoirs will be built directly inside Sudan. This completely shifts the nation from seasonal vulnerability to permanent water security, safely storing rainwater and river overflow to protect and sustain that booming agricultural sector we just talked about. Finally, Section 5, Sudanese military support, the strategic shield. Look, all this incredible economic growth requires a secure environment to survive, which brings us to the construction of a comprehensive security shield. The source reports a massive rearmament and training effort here. This is heavily bankrolled by Saudi Arabia and other regional partners, while Egyptian forces oversee the actual on-the-ground rehabilitation. The breakdown is fascinating. The Sudanese army will undergo deep structural rebuilding and joint training at bases in northern Sudan. The Sudanese Air Force is slated for extensive modernization and specialized pilot training. Meanwhile, the Navy will receive critical coastal defense training to secure those vital Red Sea ports. And it doesn't stop at the military. Even domestic security is covered. The Sudanese police force will receive advanced law enforcement training directly through the Egyptian Interior Ministry and Police Academy. I want to pause on this quote directly from the source. Rehabilitating the national state to possess independent national decision-making to manage its resources. I think this is the philosophical core of this entire massive undertaking. Why does all of this actually matter? Because after all the Egyptian engineering, the Saudi funding, and the usufruct agreements, the ultimate end goal is a Sudan that stands entirely on its own 2 feet. It's about ending decades of factional conflict and replacing it with a unified, stable state capable of independently managing its own incredible resources. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves, if this $200 billion blueprint actually succeeds, we aren't just looking at a rebuilt Sudan. We are looking at the birth of an entirely new, deeply integrated economic and military powerhouse spanning North Africa and the Red Sea. How will the rest of the world respond to this massive new bloc? That is a major geopolitical shift we will absolutely be watching closely. Thanks for learning with us today.